Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. Hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
In this GM tip, we discuss what is good encounter design.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy the News Letter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So we have another GM 911, which guys, you can find the original GM 911 in the description below. Or, of course, as always, if you have your own GM 911s you want help with, you can send them to nerdarchy@gmail.com with GM 911 right in the subject line.
All right, so we got this one from Austin, and he goes into his history of 3.5 and 4th edition, but the crux of the matter is he's trying to design encounters that are interesting and challenging, and he says, where's the happy medium of making combat challenging, yet not so easy that they just brush it through? Does he worry about an XP budget? Does he add traps or difficult terrain? What do we do here?
So a lot of times, making the encounter more interesting is evolved around like your player buying into the encounter, right? That's going to be a huge part of it. So that could be like your description, role playing with your players during the encounter, like getting them to interact on a level that just isn't I roll the d20, banter back and forth, and then there's other things you can do as well.
He looks at things and he's seeing a challenge. So he uses an example of, I got 2 wolves. There's 3 people in the party. It takes estimated 15-20 minutes. Clear a space on the table, put out the battle map, put down the 2 wolves, put down something to represent the three characters, roll initiative, all the steps, finally defeat the combat, here's your XP, move on. There's no challenge, there's no role playing, not for these characters. Is there a reason to not just say, there's a fight, you defeat 2 wolves, here's your XP? What's the downside of doing that to actually running the combat?
So here's the thing: like if you're running your encounters like that, at a certain point, it's like, what's the point in playing? Like, so you have to engage your players. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how challenging the combat is. It doesn't matter how hard the encounter is. What matters is if you were able to engage your players in it and get them to think, get them to interact, get them to feel something, right? That doesn't necessarily always have to involve the challenging encounter. That could just be the things that are going on around that encounter. For instance, 2 wolves, right? They're camping. They've made camp for the night, and one of the wolves sneaks in and grabs a pack and runs out of the camp with it. And then the other wolf is kind of like waiting, or maybe even acts as a distraction, while the wolf does it. So now it's not just 2 wolves you're gonna fight and kill them. It's 2 wolves, but one of them took your stuff, and you're like, why did they do that? What do they want? Can you just feed them and make them go away? You can try and interact with it, and that's just like me taking some ideas from the basic example he just gave.
Literally in last night's game, the first combat of the night, it hit hard, and it actually had a player dropped right from the get-go. And when I described, okay, here's the next encounter, and there's 2 spiders, they're like, oh man, we're gonna die, because they defeated the first one, but I didn't describe it any differently. I just said that there's 2 spiders there, and they're thinking in their brain, well, this other spider beat the crap out of us. How am I going to deal with 2 of them now? And they went in and they were a pushover, but there was already that level of tension from that first encounter. They were set up to, okay, I'm going into this combat shakily. I'm committed, but I'm worried. And if you do the same kind of thing where you have things that could be described similarly but are vastly different in levels of power, they can approach a combat or possibly even run from something that they can defeat easily.
You never know how players are going to interact with stuff, and sometimes it can be just your descriptions. You just never know. Like, I did an encounter with ogres and goblins, and the ogres kind of like charged the party, and the party made mincemeat of them. But then, like, the goblins stole something and ran into the woods, and then a player was like, I'm not chasing them in there. I'm not going in there. Like, for whatever reason, that was scary to them. But, it's like setting the scene and creating things. Even going back to the wolf encounter, like, you guys, the players come across a clearing, and there's two wolves over a carcass. Well, now, now you're an intruder on their hunt. And, so their hackles are up, they're snarling, they're growling, they're ready to fend and fight for their kill. What do you do? Right? And this gives your players the opportunity. Well, maybe you don't actually have to pull out the minis, right? Maybe they can circumnavigate it. Or, maybe the kill now is, a humanoid body, right? And it's got stuff that maybe the players want, or clues that it needs. Maybe you come across, and it's clear that the wolves didn't actually make this kill, but they're scavenging.
To them, it's dinner.
Yeah, right. So, like, is it still a boring encounter just because they can defeat the wolves easily?
Is there a ranger or druid in the party that actually has knowledge nature and wants to either befriend them? Here's a way to introduce your ranger to be a beastmaster, or to allow your druid to get a companion. You could allow for actual role playing. What if they cast, speak with wild, or speak with, animals?
Commune with nature, speak with animals.
There's all different ways to go into this type of encounter, depending upon what type of players you have at a table, and that's leaving aside terrain and traps and any kind of hazards that you might want to throw in there to add another layer of challenge.
And there's nothing wrong with doing that, and they're great ideas. I just wanted to be able to illustrate that even though what you're saying is an easy, boring encounter, it doesn't really have to be. There can be more to it. Maybe this is the chance for your ranger to go, oh, that's definitely a mated couple, and like you may require roles, you may not, and you might be like, oh, they're probably bringing food back to pups or something. You can try and engage them, pull them into your world some more, or maybe, like, this doesn't make sense. This is an area where you wouldn't find wolves. So there's so many different ways you can do it. And, like, all right, so forgetting about wolves and just making more interesting encounters, instead of just having, a flat grid with nothing going on, a good example would be when I was at Origins, and the battle took place on these floating, like, little tiny, like, island pieces of a monster, that were frozen in time and floating around, and these goblins would follow these creatures, and that would get frozen in time, and it would build settlements into them. So there's like ropes and rope bridges. So you could definitely do something like that, where maybe it's like a really easy DC for them to jump back and forth, or areas to push enemies off of. So there's more stuff to interact with.
And going one step further, allowing your players to have things that they can use as cover. If you're in the forest, trees, deadfalls, any kind of large scrub brush, something that is sufficient enough to grant cover, and they put it in there. Well, then that means you can potentially use it too. You've got a fight going on where both people are finding it harder to hit because there's this blockage in the way, and you could have this cool scene where they're running around this tree fighting, constantly ducking and jerking around the weapons that's tearing apart this tree. What does that now lead? Because the tree's been damaged. Is there a guardian? Is there a druid? Is there something going on? Everything that can happen can lead to or come from something else that has already happened. Whether it be, the dryad or blights or a druid because of damage to this tree or to, the plants in the area. Going back to the wolves and the body, well, it could have a clue as to what the next adventure is. And that there could be nothing that led them there, but this could lead them to somewhere. So if you've got the ability to link your events in some way, shape, or form, it's a way to make it more real. It's a way to make that mean something more.
And here's the thing, you do not have to do it ahead of time. Like, maybe it's something the players say, and you're like, that's a good idea, and you just insert that into your game. You just maybe you flippantly like it's got a signet rating on it, and in your mind it's like worth 10 gold pieces and it's treasure, right? But like they fixate on that, and then you could be like, oh well, you could try and figure out where it's from, or maybe go to a town and ask around, and and then like so now it's not just a body anymore. It starts to take on a life of its own.
It
Becomes a person.
It's now someone. And depending upon what you want to do with it, it's somebody important or it's not important. And you could send them on. Oh well, apparently the signet ring was custom made and it's valuable, but it doesn't link anywhere, or does it?
Right.
Again, how much do you want to go down this rabbit hole?
Right, or it was stolen from Sir John three days ago, and he's like really happy to get it back. Hope he's willing to pay double, and he becomes a new quest giver or something. You could do anything with it. Even like really basic, simple monsters like goblins, right, in the forest, right. You can't get any more basic than that. Goblins, as a bonus action, can disengage or hide. Well, goblin archers in a forest could be a nightmare. They have a +6 stealth check. For even a mid-level party, they might actually have the ability to to fire and disappear and keep moving around. And there could be other ones up in the trees with ambushes. And sure, these are easy monsters, but it doesn't have to be an easy encounter, especially if if it's an ambush.
I mean, if you want to really make that challenging, let's say, okay, we've got a mid-level party. Well, if we have six goblins attacking, goblins are a quarter, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's 4 per challenge. So let's just say there's 12 of them, but only 6 are attacking every round. That makes for a challenging encounter and belies how many things are actually out there. And if they're seeing like these faces popping up and a different number attacking every round, the players will be confused, and short of fireballing the forest, these guys are going to be pretty difficult to take down.
Right, and you can take easy monsters and make them more challenging by, like you said, messing with the terrain, creating hazards, using traps. What if the party comes on a patch of the road that's been soaked in oil, but they don't really know it. Maybe it's like maybe the soil's a little discolored, so
there's a weird smell in the air.
Yeah, so it's like a high DC for them to actually check, and they say they do, and you just give them one of like, oh, you smell something in the air, it's faint, and the combat starts by one of the goblins, shooting a flame arrow at the ground, igniting it, or maybe it's maybe it's a ring of alchemist fire, so it doesn't actually damage the party, but it creates a divide between them and where the enemies are. So you can do fun things, and then what you find out is this particular tribe of goblins, they've actually declared war on this region, because of something like maybe they're actually kind of in the right, like in their mind anyway, like something happened in a nearby town where they killed some goblins that they came upon. So you can muddy the waters, you can turn it into role playing and exploration. So it's not the encounter that needs to be challenging. What you need to focus on is, how can I make this encounter engaging?
So what do you guys think? Do you have any other advice for Austin, how to step up encounter design, make things more interesting? Put your thoughts and comments down below. While you're down there, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
You can patronize us in a good way.
So until next time, stay nerdy.
Hey guys, Dave from Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. Hang out with this nerd.
Nerdarchist Ted.
In this GM tip, we discuss what is good encounter design.
Jump down the description below where you can sign up for Nerdarchy.
GM 911 right in the subject line.
All right, so we got this one from Austin, and he goes into his history of 3.5 and 4th edition, but the crux of the matter is he's trying to design encounters that are interesting and challenging, and he says, "Where's the happy medium of making combat challenging, yet not so easy that they just brush it through?" Does he worry about an XP budget? Does he add traps or difficult terrain? What is he? What do we do here? Get a newsletter, get weekly gaming tips, as well as learn how to game with us.
So we have another GM 911, which, guys, you can find the original GM 911 in the description below. Or, of course, as always, if you have your own GM 911s you want to help with, you can send them to nerdarchy@gmail.com with... So a lot of times, making the encounter more interesting is evolved around like your player buying into the encounter, right? That's going to be a huge part of it. So that could be like your description, you role playing with your